me to attend. Thank you. So I was just going to say thanks for inviting me to attend the APPG today, and I really welcome your objectives and the wealth of experience that members of the APPG have brought to what is a really important topic. And officials have been keeping me informed of the progress of your inquiry. And I think the main point I wanted to make on your inquiry is that it's really cutting edge, and it's really at the right time, not least because, as we know, the market is constantly growing, it's constantly changing, it's a multi-million-pound industry that we know is growing exponentially. But what is missing is data, evidence, research, and that's what we're hoping your report is going to help contribute to. Because I know you were going to publish in June, but I think that's going to be a little bit later in the summer now. And all I would say is that's fine, because just get it right, really, because we're going to use it, and it will really contribute towards the information that we use as part of our ongoing appraisal and review of this industry, which is something that we're constantly doing because it's constantly changing and growing. As you know, and as I'm sure you're going to mention in your report when you produce it, is that the value of the non-surgical cosmetics market is predicted to rise to over £3.6 billion in the UK. That is a massive market. And by 2020, well, actually by the end of this year, and the industry itself is a significant employer of women, supporting many self-employed small businesses. And with 9 out of 10 procedures carried out on women, the industry is led by women for women. And, as a result of that, there is much that should be celebrated. I don't think any of us are here to shame anybody who uses the industry, or anybody who is a responsible practitioner within that industry. But of course, we know that it is an industry which is open to abuse, where vulnerable people can be at risk. But I'm sure you're not about, and I'm certainly not about, shaming anybody who wants to responsibly be part of that industry. The important thing is actually that every year we're talking about vulnerable women. Every year there are women left distressed and scarred because of poor practice, but that poor practice is done by a minority of practitioners. I think it's important to say that. And I just literally cannot imagine, we'd just all be talking about Zoom and how Zoom, highlights the fact that you're always on a screen and you're always looking at yourself. And I cannot imagine the emotional upheaval and distress and the changes that being a victim to that malpractice, what it can do to your life, how it can change you, how emotionally upsetting it can be. And my priority as a health minister is to ensure that the right regulatory framework is in place and it's consistent in itself, ensuring that we have consistently high levels of practice within this area. And, in recent years, we've taken many steps to improve public safety, including, I'm just going to list out what we have done, the introduction of performance assessment and the publication of ratings for providers of cosmetic surgery, and that's since 2017, under the oversight of the CQC. We've run a public communications campaign providing guidance on choosing a qualified practitioner and updated information on HS UK. We've promoted the work of the Joint Council on Cosmetic Practitioners and Save Face, who maintain accredited registers for cosmetic practitioners. But, as I said at the beginning, let's be clear, this is an expanding industry and there is a lot more work to be done. The breadth of your inquiry, something else I would like to say, actually, is if you think, I know you're not going to publish your inquiry until later in the year, but if you think there's anything in that inquiry that we need to be aware of, that I need to be aware of sooner rather than later, in order to enhance patient safety and in order to facilitate learning and to prevent people who are vulnerable from having to experience what others have already been through. If there's anything you think I need to know, then please do, in confidence, particularly if you hear of particular rogue practitioners or a procedure that you think is happening that needs to be seen to sooner rather than later. So, I know it's the summer, but please let me know if there's learning to be had or something that we can do that's proactive. Please let me know. There are a number of APPGs which broach on to and look into issues surrounding women's well-being and cosmetics and women's image, both of themselves and how they're perceived by the public, particularly on social media and other forums. And it's been the work of other APPGs also has actually been vital to us as a department in helping us to unpick issues, to really get under the skin, for want of a better word, actually an analogy in an APPG like this, but it's like a deep dive into the issues and to help us take steps towards increasing patient safety. So they've actually been vital. And you will know about Laura Trott's bill, which received royal assent on the 29th of April, which was the botulinum toxin and cosmetic fillers private members bill, which, Brain Drawers and I was delighted to sponsor that bill, and the government were delighted to get that bill through. I don't know how many of you were there on the day it went through, but it was nail biting to get it through onto the last minute. And I fully support the approaches taken in the Act for local authorities, because who's going to know first if a rogue trader sets up or there are problems in an area? It's going to be the local authority. So I was really supportive of the additional powers and provisions that local authorities were given to be able to enforce action where they will hear about rogue traders or people malpracticing in their own local authority areas. I suppose I don't want to go on too more because I could go on talking for ages, but we have the medical devices regulations, which include provision to make all dermal fillers medical devices. And we're working with the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency to consider how the UK's regulatory framework for medical devices could be widened to cover a broader range of products. This will include an assessment of the regulation of dermal fillers. And I note the findings. I talked about the APGs a moment ago. The one Caroline Noakes is a chair. I think she's also a member of this APPG. And I was really disturbed to see the Commons public survey found, the committee's public survey found 61% of adults and 66% of children feel negatively or very negative about their body image most of the time. This links into all this, into the increasing market, into the vulnerability of those groups of people, the potential to exploit those people who have this negative body image. And I think Caroline's committee's work has been almost hand in hand with what you're doing here, because the two very much link together in providing us both the data and information, and also exposing what the problems are within this area. Some of them are very sensitive problems too, and to do with people's image, self-confidence, and on one side of the coin, but on the other side of the coin, the willingness of others, more unscrupulous people, to exploit that. But we must say that most practitioners operate responsibly, regardless of their professional backgrounds, and having a healthcare background or being a trained medical practitioner doesn't guarantee that you're skilled or trained in providing cosmetic procedures. It doesn't automatically follow that if someone's been through 5 or 7 years of medical training, that they're going to be the best at, injecting dermal fillers or the best at Botox or anything else. Those two things, one does not automatically follow the other. And but I am aware of the current absence of mandatory national standards of competence or qualifications, and that can make it difficult both for practitioners looking to identify appropriate training providers and for consumers who want to make an informed choice. So I'm going to close there just to say I hope you do all understand that I had patient safety listed as the #1 priority in my ministerial portfolio. because it is my priority. It is so important to me. It covers many areas of healthcare policy and practice, but this is an area where we see patient safety really for what it is, because we do see malpractice. You look at Patterson and, and other inquiries that we have. Women are always, very often, not always, but very often, the victims of patient safety issues. And I will just make one shout out here for the Women's Health Strategy, which closes on the 13th. There's only 1 week left. We've had over 100,000 responses. That gives us a mandate for change. Those 100,000 democratically responsive voices that have clicked on the link and told us about their healthcare experience, that gives me a mandate. And so, because what you're talking about here in your APPG is about a service which is run by women, for women, and sadly the victims are women, I would ask you to, if an official can put into the link now, the link to the Women's Health Strategy, if you can share that with your forums, if you can share that with anybody we've only got till the 13th, if they've had negative experiences within this industry, if they can tell us about what those negative experiences are, that will then contribute to our evidence base for a mandate. So, along with your report, along with the report from Caroline Noakes's APPG, and along with other information that we're gathering, because this is a constantly ever-moving feast. It's a growing industry, a hugely growing industry. And sadly, I know from my other hat with mental health, we have some, vulnerable children, young people regarding body image and eating disorders and other issues at the moment. It does all link together. And so I'll close there.
Oh, thank you, Minister. That was absolutely, that was really interesting to hear, and very refreshing. And I think for other colleagues on this call who are not parliamentarians, we do work together on these things regardless of our political allegiance. When there's an issue which is really important to talk about and to do something on, you get far more achieved if it's a cross-party thing. This APPG is cross-party, but how refreshing to hear a minister tell us basically what we already knew, that there's a problem, but we have to work together to solve that problem. And one of the things that we found, particularly from early doors on looking at this, is that there seems to be within the sector a lot of rivalry between medically trained and non-medically trained. And I think it's really important to say that we have not made any decision as whether we think one is better than the other, because as you said, Minister, there are people there who are medically qualified, but not necessarily the best people to do a job. And very many therapists have far more experience in a particular field than medically trained. So this inquiry is about looking at what we need to do and recognising how important skills and knowledge is for doing that. For me, one of the biggest areas is the lack of control on social media. And whilst I know it's not in your brief, it'd be really good if you could say what your thoughts were on some of the adverts that you see on Facebook for these clinics who have got no recognised training. We know that there is no mandatory training, but there's no training there which is actually specific to a qualification. It's an in-house training or whatever, and they're offering some extraordinary treatments. And we've also had an instance where we've had a GP who's working with a clinic who's actually advertising a lifetime's remote prescription of Botox for £50. And when we see these things, it makes us think, well, there really is a problem. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on, what would your advice be on where we go with that?
So thanks for your comments, Carolyn. And one thing I didn't say in my opening remarks, which I don't think I say enough, is I honestly, truly believe that there is no place for politics in women's health. I just don't believe that there is.
Agreed.
Because there are women in all walks of life with all political allegiances, all having the same experiences. There's no place for politics. And in answer to your question, I think we are committed to, and I'm committed to, improving the quality of safety procedures. But in order to do that, I think we need to assess the options of improving trainers. You made a very important point there. So if we were going to have heart surgery, if I was going to have a heart valve replaced, I don't want it replaced by a surgeon who replaced heart valves day in and day out. I wouldn't want a surgeon who'd been trained in something else and just did this in his part-time to make extra money, or who just happened to do it, once a month or once a week or whatever. You would want someone who would be trained only in the replacement of heart valves. And I think it's just the same with cosmetic procedures. So, you made that point, and I'm glad that you are not coming down firm, it has to be a qualified GP or it has to be a qualified nurse, because what I would want to see is someone that where we can improve training, where we can recognize a standard of training, and where, if it's going to be this massive industry, where it's an industry which has both responsibilities and obligations in terms of training within that industry. So that's what I'm really looking at, training and professionalism. And that's what we're looking at as a department. That's why we're so keen to get your report, because there is very little evidence. There's very little data in this space. There's very little research that has been done. That's why it's really important what you've undertaken. But in terms of social media, I mean, frankly, it's, as you know, that's the responsibility of the social media giants. We have no say over them whatsoever, but we do constantly. We had a roundtable, I think last year, with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and others, constantly trying to make them aware of the implications of lack of regulation, lack of scrutiny of who's advertising on their sites and what they're advertising for. And I think we just need to keep up the pressure. And I think your report will do that as well. If you highlight this, you shine a light on this in your report, go for it when we were in Parliament, raise the issue, bang the drum on this. And I think, because what we do know is that these big giants don't like to be shamed into being seen to. I think they felt the heat over on mental health, particularly, and on some other issues, on online harms. And I think we've got the online harms bill going through, as you know, a bit later this year. But I think they've begun to feel the heat really recently, because we have seen some change. I think they're waking up to the fact that they have a degree of social responsibility towards young people, particularly, who tend to use their sites. So, I'm totally with you. There's not a lot we can do other than keep holding their feet to the fire, keep raising the issue. It's like a big tanker on the ocean. I think the more we do, your report, Laura's bill, our review internally, the more we do, the more we turn that big tanker, and we just have to keep going.
You're on mute, Caroline. Can I ask a question? I bet that's what you're saying. Do you want to, hi, Minister. Lovely to have you on here, and great to hear you speak about how much there is to celebrate in the industry, because it is an important industry and there is much to celebrate. But there's also things that we need to tackle, which you also raised, and that it's so important to get the appropriate regulation. And throughout our inquiry, we've just heard from so many people saying about the lack of regulation and the need for regulation in terms of a national licensing scheme, and whether there's any possibility of amending the Local Government Act so that we could have one to give that assurance for consumers and practitioners alike. So I just wondered whether you'd considered the merits of this approach, and whether that's something that you would be considering actively.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to look at increasing the powers of local authorities. We have just given the bill doesn't come into, I'm just looking to see when, I think it's October this year, when, although Laura Trott's bill has received royal assent, I don't think it actually comes into practice until October this year. That will give local authorities, a huge amount of powers to prosecute. But at the moment, there is no legal definition on what counts as or what qualifies as a professional practitioner in terms of the administration of cosmetic, dermal fillers, Botox, cosmetic procedures. So I think it's kind of like the cart before the horse. Yes, we need to look at giving authority. Let's see how those powers work that they have. Let's see, and that's going to be interesting to observe as we move on. will local authorities use those powers? Will they be, you know, swift to identify people in their area? Will they do what we're hoping they do? And if they do, can we take that and grow that? Can we enhance that model of giving local authorities more powers? But at the same time, we should be looking at, and my officials are constantly, and again, I'll just say, well, you know, that's one of the reasons why we're waiting for your review, for your reports, looking at what is a practitioner of cosmetic procedures? What comes under that umbrella? What qualifications does that person need? What would we determine as somebody who is a professional practitioner of cosmetic procedures? And that's something we've got under review as well. So there's lots to happen in this space, but, you know, also interesting to see how local authorities respond to having these new powers when they become legal in the autumn. Oh, I've just had a thing, so I've only got 5 minutes. Sorry, I've got to go and speak at another APPG, I think, or meeting. Sorry. Can't hear you, Carolyn.
It was lovely to see you. Thank you so much. And Judith and I will see you in the debate later on menopause, another subject we all like to talk about. But I really do feel that there's a lot of work that we can do together. The report will be comprehensive. It would have been done with love, because it's something that we're really passionate about. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
So Carolyn, we're really looking forward to getting it. Give us some time to read it, to study it, to look at the recommendations, and then let's meet again. But really looking forward to the report being published.
We're looking forward to doing it and help do what we can to make sure we get this environment in the right place.
Can I just ask you, when do you think it is going to be published?
Catherine?
I'm on meeting. We hope to do it before the recess, so hopefully beginning of July.
Okay, well, let's hope you get it into the chamber and we can first talk about it then, but then I really look forward to getting it out and we can do some work on it.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much.
Take care, everyone.
See you later. Bye. Bye, Nadine.
Bye.
Bye.
See you over the road.
Yeah.